and I got, as you guys say, triggered.
This is more on the drama side of things or whatever. So basically what I would say is, I think I want to explain something for why people might be boys with you one day and then just stab you in the back the next.
Hi, what's up?
Cool. I came to talk about rape, you know?
Oh, joy. Okay.
One time, I wanted to talk with you for a while. I heard your conversation with Brittany, and I got, as you guys say, triggered. Yeah, I enjoy saying that now. So basically, I
Also,
wanted to
wait.
chat with you.
Before we
okay.
go down this road.
Hands up. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Brittany's a friend of mine. We're chill. Everything is cool. Just saying. I don't want
not
anybody
like
to come on
her.
and start like shit people that aren't on my strip or anything like that. But
No,
okay, go for it.
no,
Okay.
I like her. I like her a
good,
lot.
good,
I think
okay.
she's super interesting.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
so
All
no
right,
worries
go.
there.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was just basically, she's like super based. I actually really love her. Would love to talk with her actually if she's interested. She's super fun. But anyhow, it's just the way people talked about it, I guess. And I guess your position on that, if I'm correct, is that it seems kind of like you're like not completely sure why people seem to think, almost all people, to be honest, that rape is way worse than, for example, getting jumped and like beaten up heavily. So your position was, as I understood it in that conversation, is that it might be more socially influenced than not, basically.
Well, I know there's some social influence, but that might not even be relevant. It's more just like I'm just curious in general, like people's thoughts and feelings are like. I can think of a few reasons why sexual assault would be worse than like getting jumped. I'm just kind of curious, like how much every factor plays into things. That's all I wanted to know, or if there are any like protective or like risk factors or whatever for having a worse experience or whatever. That's basically what my questions kind of were about.
Yeah. I see. So it's not like a strong stance that
No.
not. Yeah. So
on almost
just, like,
anything related to like trauma or
basically.
anything like that, I'm probably never gonna have a strong stance because all of it is like
Makes sense.
very difficult to know, right? Yeah.
Basically, her answers were, some of them were like really cool, I think. But you then talked to another lady, Ayla, I think. And
Ayla,
so there was like different conversations, but I just like basically wanted to add first. I think her Britney's stance about getting beaten up was hilarious because she was talking like it's just Jackie Chan movie or some shit.
Yeah.
You basically were talking about like getting like jumped by random dudes like on the street, getting like beaten up on the floor with legs, their legs like beating the shit out of you, getting broken ribs, broken a lot of like bruising, internal bleeding, whatever the. So nothing, and she was basically talking about the glorious fight that you can win,
Sure,
and restore your glory, which I think is very funny. I like laughed at that, but anyhow, I don't think that's how it is generally. And yeah, so many people make arguments like about being violated, basically, but I think this works with beaten up as well, which is like what makes it a bad argument.
I'm gonna put out one thing in support of something that Brittany said. Somebody, oh my God, they're listening right now and I'm not gonna remember who told it. They're gonna get upset that I don't remember, but somebody gave me this example yesterday and said that certain types of fights elicit different types of feelings. And it was something that I hadn't thought about before, that like there might be a particular type of feeling of excitement. Now, when I say excitement, I mean like adrenaline, not like, oh, this is so much fun, but that like your big like fight or flight or whatever.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that there are some fights, even if you're getting jumped, that involve that feeling. And then there are other fights that involve forms of terror, especially in feelings when you're like restrained. That like fighting with somebody, even if they're beating the shit of you, is going to have a markedly different feeling than somebody like effectively grappling you where you can't move and you're like completely restrained. And actually in my head, I compare that to I did like play fighting as a kid, but the one thing that stands out to me, it's still like as a kid, is when you play with kids that are too stupid to play responsibly in pools. When somebody like jumps on you and they like dunk you under the water and like hold you for way too long, that type of feeling is actually way different than like you're running around and you're like kind of fighting with people. And so if the rape one feels more like the latter than the former, I can see there being a different sort of feeling there, where like on the rape thing, it's not like I'm super ready to like fight and blah blah blah, versus like there's like an overwhelming presence person's on top of me and I'm kind of like restrained in an area and I can't move as much, along with all the other stuff that goes in rape. But I just wanted to, I wanted to give that perspective. Brittany, I don't think she enunciated that well or didn't enunciate that, but to lend some credence to that idea, yeah, I would put that, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a great example actually, but it's just that I understand like what she meant, but I think some people have like this glorified idea about, the fights and everything, especially women, because no offense to most women have never been in a fucking fight.
Sure.
I mean, I'm about to bet like my money on that shit. So like maybe it's different like in Ukraine. I'm not sure. Maybe in USA you're like badass chicks, beating up people like in Marvel movies. But in real life, most women don't participate in actual fights. They also never get beaten up. Like they might get slapped, pushed, like jerked by a hand, somewhere. But rarely are they in a fist fight, At least like. In my experience if I ask my guy friends, most of them have been in some sort of fight,
Okay,
but if I ask my girl friends, they would say, well, nah, not really, or they will say a fight that something is like a slap or something like that. So not the fight when you walk away from it with broken ribs and bruises all over your face,
Sure.
So yeah, so there's that. So I think many women that say like 100% like rape is 100% worse, they never been jumped and beaten up, I presume.
True, that is true, but I will say that also for men oftentimes have no concept of sexual pressure. I have never in my life felt, even for a woman that pushed me, I've never felt sexual pressure for a woman, because I could always kill a woman if she's on top of me and pressure me. It's like not even a thing that I think about in my mind. Like having like a small woman like who's going to pull me around. The feeling of having somebody markedly larger than you that could do whatever they want to do, and there's a level of trust that women need to engage in sexual intercourse that men don't need at all. It's an external process. We're usually always bigger than the people. Yeah. So I will say that probably plays a slightly different thing into it. So whereas like women might make dumb statements about like, oh, like fighting is glorious and it can be fun and blah, blah, blah. Men will make dumb statements where it's like, oh, well, you could always just like kick a rapist off you and like, who cares? And like, is it really that big of a deal? Blah, blah, blah. Like sometimes women assault men or whatever. And it's like,
Yeah, I think it's about the same actually in that regard, because most women have not been in a fight and most men have never been sexually assaulted or even have no like idea what it's even like.
Sure. And then to be clear, just one more on that, because people are going to fucking nail me to the cross on ultra crazy. A lot of men probably have been sexually assaulted, but the way that it plays out is different. Like I think when you look at domestic abuse, I think rates of violence between men and women are actually similar, but men do way more damage. So even if it's reported at similar levels, like it's very rare that a woman is hitting a man and sending him to the hospital. That's like almost never going to happen.
That's true. Yeah. Unlike some like special circumstances when you use like a bottle or some shit, I don't know, like some something like that can happen obviously. So I'm not saying men are not getting sexually assaulted. Of course they are, by other men, by women as well, obviously, right? But it's just not as such a huge like thing as it is with women in general. So so basically my whole idea of why it's worse, rape, I mean, is I guess like there are like three main points, I guess. First one is like actual like social things that you talked about. So many women in Ukraine, for example, would say, who have been sexually assaulted or raped, would say that they're like a damaged goods now.
Sure.
Which I don't think is exactly like very progressive. Obviously, like not, but I think that's still in the back of many women's like mind, even in like very Western societies, because you think you have been like basically like robbed of something, and you feel like you have like this stain basically on you. I don't know, like taint or something, you know? So you have been like kind of, they express this feeling at least, being like taint, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I've had stories of friends that, is disgusting as it is, where when men in their lives, like relationship partners, find out they've been raped, they view them differently. And that which is horrible.
Actually happens. Yeah. So yeah, this is like a socially reinforced, like I guess, devalue of you as like a woman if you have been raped. And also there's like obviously second factor is when you get beaten up, but let's put it like in assault category. So not like fun fights, but the assault, you have been assaulted or sexually or like beaten up. So if you've been assaulted and you have like bruises, you have like shit stolen from you, maybe you have like, it sounds bad, but you have like proof of something that was done to you. So most people will always believe you if you tell them that you have been assaulted by some dudes. and on the street, and you have like bruises and shit like that, whatever, whoever you are, man or women, most people will, believe you, judging by your appearance and stuff like that. But whereas rape, if it wasn't like a very violent type of rape, so like when you have like bruises and shit, or someone tried to strangle you or something like that, it's like an invisible damage.
Yeah.
So basically you can't really show it, and many people will doubt it, and they will basically don't believe you. So there's that problem, I think, which makes rape way worse than getting beaten up. I think this might be the main one, actually, in my mind.
And some of the literature that I read, somebody actually sent me a textbook last night, and in one of the chapters on trauma and stuff relating to trauma, one of the big risk factors that it brought up was that for certain types of crimes, there is a high likelihood for believing it, and in others, people are way more agnostic. So like you said, if I walk into a hospital and my arm is broken, I might have to actually fight to not get my friend in trouble, right? Like if my friend comes in with me, he's like, oh, I broke his arm. He might get like arrested, and people are even believing that there was a crime, and even if I say there wasn't a crime. But when it comes to rape, you can go into a full rape kit, even have some types of injuries, and it's like, like maybe we even do believe you, but like, can we charge this or whatever? Like it's a way different type of thing, not being believed that a particular thing has actually happened to you. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's like the worst feeling, not ever, but quite on a top scale of being the worst feelings. Also, there's like, this might be a little bit old-fashioned, since I'm not evolved Westoid,
of course, don't worry,
an Eastern
forgive
European
you.
person. But yeah, forgive me in advance. But I think it has sex, and sexual pleasure is tied with love, with romance. Sex is tied with something you do with a partner, with maybe like a person you like, or maybe just straight up like pleasurable experience. So it's supposed to be, at least, right, in your head.
Yeah.
So when something that's supposed to be like, I'm not gonna say like magical, it makes it sound stupid, and old-fashioned, but something that's supposed to be like at least pleasurable, and if not just pleasure, then something you do with a partner, with the person you love, with the person you at least like. So this it's when you like rape, it taints this whole thing for a while, basically, and maybe forever in a way, because for some people, right, who are like very traumatized by that. But I think it like something that's supposed to be good is getting like disturbed basically by this something that happened to you. It's never good when people beat you up, So
yeah,
basically,
I noticed.
you
Yeah,
don't
I understand. You never fight for fun. Well, unless you're like actually like a professional fighter.
Sometimes you are, but
yeah. But whereas for sex, like now
in
you've got
most
something that's like supposed to be like a fun, pleasurable activity, and now you've tied like other weird things that might ruin it for you into it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's something you're supposed to like. Which is something that is quite integral in most people's life, right? If you're not like asexual or something like that. So yeah, so for you it will be like a constant experience. Then if you're traumatized, you may not be. There's also that situation. But if you are, and quite a lot of people are, by that, judging by by what people say, that then they will, every time it will be brought up in your head, basically. So you would have like great time with the person you love, with the person you care about, and still this experience may trigger that memory. So it's very, in that regard, it like kind of ruins your life, I guess, in a way, because so you can obviously get jumpy after I don't know, walking alone in the dark alley after you have been like attacked, basically. Obviously this can also happen, but I think like sexual stuff is more, I guess, prevalent in most people's life. So yeah, there's also like this whole biological shit, which I guess like repercussions. You can get like pregnant, you can get like a bunch of like different awful stuff that can be like the result of rape. You can get like STDs, I think it's called in English, right? Like that.
Yeah, a little bit. I don't think any of that stuff actually matters, but I know people like to bring it up.
I don't know.
Well, if rape was like, if we had a 1 to 100 scale and rape is bad at like 100, if we say like, okay, well, let's say you got raped but there were no chance of STDs or pregnancy, I think it would go from like 100 to like 99. It would like barely move. I don't think
maybe,
it would like But yeah, I understand people bring it up as like confounds too. Yeah.
The pregnancy thing, I think, is pretty scary for people who are against abortion, for example.
That could be true, actually, if you're anti-abortion. And
yeah. So, for example, I'm not gonna like name anyone, but I had a friend who was raped and she got pregnant, and she's very religious, so she did not do an abortion. Yeah, So she definitely did not want a rapist child,
Sure.
and she didn't want to raise it alone, but she just couldn't do it because of the, her moral, I guess, convictions, you could say. So for her, it was a fucking disaster, to say the least. So for her, it was like the worst thing that came up of that, rape thing. And it was like a straight up rape. It was not like, rape as some people like call it. She was just grabbed by a man. She didn't knew him. He attacked her on the street, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's, it's a very, she now is pretty happy with the child and everything, so it's good, I guess. But overall, it was like for a year, it was like a whole lots of stress, like for her in every way possible, which is something I think most men don't even like think that much about,
Yeah.
because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not something. Getting beaten up will not get you with a fucking baby, So yeah, so there's that, I guess. But also, I think it depends. Most, as far as like I know, statistics show that most rapes happen with people you know. So basically, it's done by people you know. So like maybe a friend, a relative, someone you know, maybe like a potential like boyfriend or husband or something. So basically, someone you know, right?
Yeah.
So I think that also adds to it a bit because. Because I think it adds to basically the traumatic thing of it, because it's someone you know.
Yeah, you
And,
trust, yeah.
yeah, so the trust is way more broken than in just some randos on the street. They're not your friends who are beating you up, most likely, right? So I think it's way much. For example, my closest friend who is at war, right, who is in the front lines right now, he used to fight all the time. He would just get himself in fights all the time. He enjoyed it, to be quite honest. He liked it, the thrill of it and everything. But as a child, he was severely beaten up by his father. And it's completely different. So getting beaten up by like some random dudes in bar who he picked the fight with himself, most likely, it's completely different experience than getting beaten up by someone you're supposed to, trust, someone you're supposed to take care of you or something like that,
Sure.
someone you have like emotional connection with. So he would never like talk about that the same exciting way he talked about getting into fights in bars,
Yeah,
So
that
I
makes sense,
think
yeah.
this makes like a big difference in a way, because I do think I'm not sure because I don't have like any stats on that, but I do think if you ask people if they got beaten up by their like best friend or spouse, or maybe like someone they love, I think that would be way worse that for them, like in terms of emotional processing, than getting beat up by strangers. It's
Yeah,
my theory.
I'd
I'm not
imagine
sure.
so. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think that's also like adds to it, I guess. And yeah, so Brittany mostly talked about like the experience itself, of being like something like you don't want like in your body and stuff like that. That's true, obviously. So I'm not gonna like repeat that. But I think like yeah, but I think overall, I my mother's friend, who is like her colleague, she was like assaulted basically on the street in terms of like the guy tried to grab her back, but she wouldn't like give it to him. Basically, she was trying to hold on to it, and he started to like beating her the fuck up. At first he like kicked her, with his fist, then he started beating her up with his legs, and he just wouldn't fucking stop until people saw him on the street, and then he ran off basically. So she ended up in the hospital. She ended up with like severe bleeding, with like a broken, jaw, something, I think ribs as well. Well, basically a bunch of like different stuff. And she was traumatized for sure by that. So she was like extremely jumpy near like man. She wouldn't go like on the street in certain hours. She was like very cautious, just looking, looking back at it all the time. So she was definitely like, I would say, traumatized by that. I don't know how to compare it with a rape,
Sure.
but in that regard, I think it can also like happen. But most people, I guess, most women, I guess you could say, they think about it a lot. So, or they are basically trained that they could be raped, basically. I don't know, it sounds maybe sounds kind of bad, but people talk about it, with you. And you think about it, you hear about it from other people, but rarely I heard like as a girl that someone could, beat me up. It's not something like in your mind even, I
Sure.
think. But as a guy, it's completely like different. I think many know that you can get beat up, but rarely they are told you can get sexually assaulted or like violated in a sexual way. So I think there's like also like the fear of the thing also grows because you think about it as like the worst thing ever.
Yeah, sure.
In a way.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe, yeah.
although it is, a bit very, very awful, but you also think of it as something like incredibly awful all the time, and other people tell you to, I think. So yeah. So there's also like this thing of losing control, which you mentioned yourself, about the holding underwater thing, I guess you could say. Or basically, a psychologist, like my sister worked with, Israeli psychologists to how to deal. She's a psychologist herself, so how to deal with basically trauma of like missile strikes, stuff like that in Ukraine. They gave like master classes for free, basically, to Ukrainian psychologists, the Israeli psychologists. So they would say that the most terrifying thing about that whole ordeal is, and the most traumatic, is a lack of control. So universally, like, for example, earthquake, poor fucking Turkey, and Syria, is considered to be one of the most traumatic events a person can ever experience. So basically, because of that complete lack of control and losing foundations, basically. So you're like the ground you're like literally standing on starts to to shake and fall apart, which is pretty much like the worst experience apparently a person can feel.
Sure. Makes
So
sense. Yeah.
get it, yeah. So basically, I think that in a way also, of course, like in rape, when you freeze, quite a lot of women like freeze. They don't like put a struggle, I guess. So that's what Brittany was talking about. So if you like are getting beaten up, at least you can put some kind of like struggle.
Yeah.
But most women, I can also fight off a rapist, but generally they don't. So a lot of times they just freeze up. So you're there, but you're not doing anything. You're just like petrified,
Yeah.
Also, there's some thoughts come to your mind, like if I will struggle, they can kill me. They can do like all sorts of stuff. So there's like a bunch of like horrible, I guess, things, and like lack of control, I guess, is one of those things as well. So if you're getting beaten up by 5 dudes, you don't have any control, but at least you have like some. I guess the false feeling that you do. I
Yeah,
guess.
it's a different type of feeling. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Maybe. Yeah, that's also an idea. Yeah. I also wanted to add something else, but I forgot. It was something I thought about when you talked with her, but it has been a while. So yeah, maybe it comes back, but maybe not. Well, yeah. Overall, I just wanted to to add to how it feels basically, and why it might feel worse, I guess, than getting beaten up.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, although many men, I think, underplay it as well.
Yeah,
So they
probably,
get like assaulted and shit, and they're like, "Oh shit, that was like so terrifying, getting like beaten up, and it hurts like fucking hell," And it's not like that. And they, when you ask them, like, "Yeah, it was cool, I'm cool, I'm masculine, I don't care about this shit." I had conversations like that with my male friends who clearly were not happy about what happened, but they like pretended to be, to be okay with what happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's also that, I think. So maybe many people like underplay getting like this thing, like feeling that getting beaten up is traumatic actually, but yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
Also this Israeli psychologist told like very interesting thing. They say do everything like in your power to not actually traumatize the person who is not traumatized. Basically, don't create like trauma. So what they meant is like, for example, a missile attack, right? And some people will be traumatized, some won't. But if you tell a person who is not traumatized that they are traumatized, then they will be.
Yeah, I think that's probably like the most controversial part of everything I'm talking about that seems to have people trigger the most is I don't know if that's true, but I feel like it is. And I feel like I see that in other...
Apparently.
Yeah.
Apparently it is, because they know their shit. They like assist people after, attacks all the time, like very terrorist attacks, stuff like that. So they say they basically told my sister and the group that was present of psychologists there, they basically told her like never do that. So if you like approach a person and they're like sitting there, and never come to them and say, "Oh my God, you're so traumatized. This was so traumatic. This was so awful," because they will think like, am I?
Yeah.
Was it really? Am I? I am. Holy shit, and it works. They like Israeli psychologists really told like this is something they are like prohibited basically to do, because they will approach a person and they will say, "You're fine. You're like okay. Go make yourself coffee or something." And it may sound like very silly, but they are trying to give the control back to the person. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I can do that. I can do that." So they stand up, and they go do something like basic task. And they perform this basic task, and they feel much better about what is going on. So returning control and not traumatizing people that are not traumatized. So yeah, not people ask me all the time, like from your community, from Wash, from all other place. They say you must be traumatized. You must be so traumatized. You must be like in depressed. You must be traumatized. And I'm like, I'm not. I'm really not. Like not because I'm like I'm trying to pretend like I'm strong or something, but I just I'm not. I'm like literally not depressed, and I don't feel traumatized whatsoever.
Sure.
So yeah, but people full on either don't believe me or are trying to convince me that I am, which is pretty weird. Also, I had this conversation with my sister as well, and she also have been told by her friends who are psychologists, by the way, themselves, which is weird. She was told like, "Oh, after what happened like to your father and to your house, you must be like traumatized." And she was like, "No." And they just straight up don't believe you. They think you're like pretending, which is very
probably
weird experience.
Yeah, it's probably difficult as well too, because some people probably can be traumatized and they're not necessarily aware of it. Like they don't even have that
Yeah,
awareness
true,
of
but
themselves, which is also complicated.
yeah.
But yeah, telling somebody over and that was one of the more controversial things I made as well, is that I wonder sometimes, depending on how we treat like certain assaults, like is it possible that there are some people that are overreacting to things just because they're told they should be? I don't know the answer to that. I was just curious, but like some people obviously get really mad
I
when
think it's definitely possible.
Yeah,
It's
maybe
definitely possible. Yeah, I talked with Kyla about that, not so erudite, and she was also like very interested in this whole Israeli psychologist conference that I told her about, because she was also having like this idea. She works with, as you probably know, obviously, in the guys in your community know, she works like with children who are very like, from different like teenagers with a different kind of like problems or substance abuse and stuff like that basically, and she would also like see her colleagues basically like doing this trauma shit like on the children who are not traumatized. There are those who are, obviously, right? But yeah, so it's very hard to, and you should be cautious about that, obviously, is what I'm saying. So the person can be in denial, obviously. They can say, oh, I'm not traumatized, but they are,
but you need to look for like
but sometimes
markers of that behavior. You can't just assume it and then yeah.
yes, but sometimes they're genuinely not. So they're genuinely not, and you can make them by basically hyping up the horrible thing they experienced and telling them that they should feel a certain way about it. And after you experience some like very emotionally hard thing, you can be easily like not manipulated is a wrong word, I think, but you can be pressured, I guess, to feel a
One of the
certain
things I
thing.
read that this was for the development of PTSD, that I think the events immediately following a traumatic thing and the traumatic thing itself, like those two things are really, really, really important for being a predictor for if
Yeah.
you develop PTSD. It's like the events that immediately follow some particular traumatic thing too. So
Exactly. That's
maybe
what they said, basically. So that's why they said about this coffee thing. So basically, this is just happened, right? So the missile just like blew the fuck, up the street, basically, right? So there are several people who are like in shock, several people who are like injured, but this person is not injured, and they seem like kind of fine, but they are just very like emotionally distressed, which is
Sure.
not trauma. They're just distressed, and it's a normal reaction. They just experience something very distressing. It's fine to be distressed, and they like observe this person, and they give them this like small task to return control to them, and it's very important in those like first 20 minutes basically to redirect them. They will ask them to help others, to help other people, to go ask people how they doing, basically to to do the most like normal stuff possible after that event happened. And yeah, and they like swear that it works basically. So
Sure.
they like say it works like in all in they deal with it quite a bit. And yeah, so they were sharing this, I guess, knowledge with like Ukrainian psychologists, so they could, also use it in those like distressing situations that happen here, like way more than they happen in Israel right now. So yeah, so there's like this component to it, I guess. Yeah, basically that's it. I think like I forgot something, but I don't know what. So maybe I should like go and chill. Basically, don't remember something important, but I forgot whatever the fuck.
Okay.
So you're still blue. I see.
Yeah, holding on. My
Yeah.
hair's getting longer though, so I think I'm gonna have to cut it pretty soon.
The roots are growing,
Yeah.
The biggest problem of hair dyed people. The damn roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to either accept them as they are or bleach them. But
Yeah, I don't want to keep
uh,
rebleaching. It's like agony, so fuck that. But yeah.
yeah, but I think it shouldn't be. Like, was your like scalp hurting when it was
Yeah, it
happening,
hurts.
or
Painful. Burns your.
it shouldn't?
Really?
It shouldn't. Yeah, it's a bad bleaching job if your scalp hurts. First of all, the bleach should not be like extremely concentrated, basically not high percentage.
Well, yeah, I
for
think
it
mine
not
was
to hurt.
it was like a producer 20 or something, or 20 developer or whatever.
Holy,
What?
of course it hurt. It's a very high, dude. It should
I thought
be
very
way
high.
lower.
I think high is like when you get like producers like 40 and stuff. No, isn't that really high?
Oh no, dude, I never use like anything above like 6, 8. It's just it's at
Maybe in
faster on
America, maybe
myself.
we're built different, you know?
Maybe, yeah. I don't know, like maybe your hair like is very dark, also a possibility, obviously. But still, you should like process longer, but with lesser percentage. It works way better that way. So also, your hair should not be very clean. It should be like kind of like there should be oil on your scalp. It prevents that from hurting your skin to burning it. Yeah, so very like super clean head is not the best way to bleach your hair without feeling uncomfortable. So yeah, um, those two things I think. Also, covering it up sometimes also hurts. Like if you have like a hat or something that covers the hair and the bleach, so it processes without any air. It can also be a little bit like burny. But yeah, but overall it shouldn't like be painful. It should be like it can make maybe itchy a little bit, but not like full on burning. That's not something that should happen
Okay.
at all.
I'll keep it in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, also, I think the root look is popular now, but I'm not sure how it will mesh with blue. So
The root
there's
look?
like,
What, having your roots growing a little bit?
yeah. So we have a little bit of a
yeah.
root basically.
I'm curious because I
It's-
think what I'm probably gonna do is I'm probably gonna get like a normal haircut, like chop off like half of this, but I don't know what it's gonna
sure.
look like with like half brown and half blue. I don't know. It'll either look really cool or
Maybe
really
weird.
fucking stupid. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe weird. Yeah. Also, the blue is a very specific color, so not I'm not like judging considering I'm like green. But yeah, it's a very specific color. When I had blue, it looked kind of good with my roots because I have a very gray hair.
Okay.
So like my natural hair is very cool, like in color. So it looked kind of dope. But if it's not like if it's more like a chocolatey type of color, then it might be weird.
Yeah,
But anyhow,
well, I guess I'll find out.
yeah. Hair dyeing tips. Don't burn your scalp, people. It shouldn't burn.
Listen,
Like,
hey, it worked
like-
well, so
Yeah.
we'll see. Okay.
Yeah, well, anyhow, protect your scalp, and I guess see you at some point.
Okay.
Bye, duders. Yeah, bye.
Have fun. Be careful. Stay safe. What? Did she ask like a question? Bye? It's kind of weird. Okay. Nice. All right. This is tangentially related, but have you considered this question? If a white man rapes a woman, will the woman be more afraid of white men or just all men? What if a black man rapes a woman? That's probably there's probably a really complicated answer to figuring that out. And I think it has to do with the type of, my guess there is it's going to be the type of society that you live in based on who you're more likely to stereotype. Like here, this would be an assumption I would make. I would assume that if you got attacked by a white man, you're probably not going to assume all white men are going to attack you. But if you got attacked by a minority type figure, you might assume that all minorities would attack you of that figure, right? So like if you lived in like Africa, in the darkest country in the world, and a white man jumped you, you might say like, fuck, I think all white men are going to jump me because it's like a minority. I think we tend to, I think sociologically, the majority figure is not generally stereotyped. That's just not a human thing to do. We don't generally do that. But we do stereotype minorities. That's why like white people don't typically get all these things ascribed to them unless you're on Twitter. Whereas like a minority type can get stereotyped very quickly. Yeah, I think that's just like a human thing that we tend to do. You might see it from a minority victim with a majority attacker, though. Oh, that could be true. Could it be true? Actually, I'm not sure. I don't know. I think minorities are racist against other minorities, too. I think minorities are hella racist against other... They might be more racist than majorities sometimes. We just don't see it as majority-type figures. Especially academically, it feels like we push white versus the world a lot. white versus the world, white versus the world, white versus the world. And we tend to miss a lot of the complicated racist interactions between other minority groups as well. So, but I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. So I just want to say,
Fucking loser.
this
I
is
hate
more,
that fucking guy. Sorry, go ahead.
no, this is more on the drama side of things or whatever. So basically, what I would say is, I think I want to explain something for why people might be boys with you one day and then just stab you in the back the next. I think that there's like this thing that happens in your orbit where like you have a conversation, you have a few good conversations, you have a few good debates, blah 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 blah. You feel like you're relatively fraternal, you're friendly, you're on the same level, et cetera, et cetera. Then there's a super fucking heated debate, a super heated fucking conversation, and it feels like you go from a peer where you're somebody who like of similar intellect or somebody who has something interesting to say or something like that, and you go from being a peer streamer to being the content that is milked. And so when you experience that, it's like, oh fuck, like I thought we had like a pseudo social relationship. So my expectations of our relationship are different. Therefore, you know, whatever like friendly feelings that I fucking had, apparently that was all one-sided. As a result of that, fuck this guy, I'm gonna go after him super hard. Now, I think I just like DM'd you in the fucking wake of the incident or whatever, and we just fucking talked it out or whatever. But at the same time, like I think that's the instinct that a lot of people have when they're getting dogpiled is they're like, oh, I thought we were friends. Well, we're not. Fuck this guy.
Yeah, I can understand that. I can empathize with that. I think I'm probably just so used to like the waves of like the ocean of the internet. Like I'm like a hero on TikTok to black women, but now I just did a thing with a girl. And we joke because she was like, I'm gonna clip the fuck out of you. And I was like, go for it, do your worst. And now like I think everybody on her TikTok thinks I'm a rapist. It's just like the ebb and flow of the internet. I'm probably used to it, but when other people that are smaller content creators are engaging with me and I seem really friendly one day, and then the next day I become like a stand-in for like the community that is now like the linchpin of destroying your life, it probably feels kind of weird to people. I can empathize with that, sure.
Well, and then contextually, like this is what I want to tell other creators because this isn't just you. This is going to happen to every kind of creator that's fucking out there. They're going to be the belle of the ball, kicking ass, taking names, growing, getting subs, making money, this, that, the other, and then the next day they're going to be getting their dick kicked in for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that you have to fucking take into account is scale. So for instance, I think last night on Destiny still does really well. I think they get like 50,000 to like 150,000 views for a good chunk of the content that they post. And then obviously people are fucking dogging me in the comments. That's to be expected. I didn't check out the subreddit. I'm not a fucking idiot. But the amount of people who came my way in order to talk shit was probably like 20 or 30. And you have to think that like 100,000 people saw that conversation and did not like what I had to say. So the fact that it's like 30 out of 100,000 is actually microscopically small, even though it feels like it's the entire world.
Yeah, a little bit. I would just have to say you have to be careful because like I don't know if you've noticed, but even for really big streams, like you can have 5,000 plus viewers, you only need 10 chatters to destroy the mood and experience for the streamer. It only really takes 10. Same thing in your Twitter comments. Like I would guesstimate that even at huge scales, getting 3 death or rape threats in a day is going to be like game over. Like that's going to be insane. Even with 100,000 or 1 million people hating you, like just getting 3 death threats is like, fuck me, like I can't handle this. So the amount of people that it takes to produce an incredibly negative reaction is very small. So that's like the frustrating thing that I kind of have to fight. And there's like 2 ends of that where I'll be like, bro, like I have like 500,000 people that watch this video. Like I'm sorry if like 10 people contacted you, like that's not like representative of the audience. But then to the other person, well, 10 people contacting them in a single day giving them death threats is probably 10 more than have ever contacted them ever giving them death threats, you know? So yeah, it's rough on both ends of that, you know?
Yeah, and so I just wanted to give that as like a little shout out to the people who are coming up in the streaming world and might get their shit kicked in or whatever. I would say that it felt like I avoided getting my shit kicked in for a really long time, so it just felt like my turn at bat. So it's going to take a little bit more than that for me to backstab you. So you know, we'll give it another 6 months or so.
All right, we'll see. Okay. Well, hey, I love you, buddy. Be careful. Wait, do you play any games?
Yeah, of course.
What do you play?
I play Darktide. It's a Warhammer 40k first-person cooperative shooter. But I mean, also if you do FPSs, I do FPSs. If you wanted to do an RTS, I would do an RTS. So.
Do you play Warzone?
No, but me being the fucking worst person on the team could be pretty fucking funny. Like, I'm pretty good at, like, first-person shooters. I'm nowhere near as good as my editor, but, I hate that survival battle royale shit, because I don't have 4 hours to run around. But if you were saying, hey, come game, I'd fucking do it.
Okay, I might try that Dark Tide game. Maybe we'll see. But okay,
Try Dark Tide. It's a good introduction into the Warhammer 40k universe. Which, by the way, check out Counterpoints. Counterpoints 30k is my Warhammer 40k channel. Counterpoints Coliseum is my fucking debate channel.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, have fun. Be careful. Okay.
All right. Love you. Be safe.
Bye. Oh, having conversations where we're like able to just go through and read everything is like so fucking nice. Oh my god. Oh wait, I'm thinking Dark Tide. I wasn't thinking Dark Tide. I was thinking of what's that one game that Moon plays all the time, like Dark and Darker or something. That's what I was actually thinking of.
This is how unfairly the legal system is treating XQC. XQC's ex-adapter sued him for divorce even though they were never married. That is already weird, but hang on, because I have proof that this was all planned. Henry Rosilla Linting, a really famous couple lawyer, pointed out in a video that before suing XQC, Adapter deleted almost every tweet and post on her platforms. Why? Because she didn't want to have any data or proof that could be used against her in court. Now the real evil side of her gonna shine. After everything was deleted, then she sued X and made a request to the jury that X is not allowed to remove anything from his platforms because it can manipulate the ongoing case. That is like playing a game of poker and getting to see the cards before anyone else. So now the case is manipulated in the case she wanted, since she maybe deleted evidence that goes against what she's stating to the jury. I contacted Anonymous to hack Adapter Twitter to get her old data back. Let's call them up. Hi, did you get any data back from her account?
Yes, Moo Kitty. I sent it to you.
Okay, thank you, bye. He couldn't get so many tweets back, but here's some proof that she actually did delete tweets. I really hope that you, judge, look into this, because XQC is innocent. If you need a lawyer, subscribe to me. Better call Moo Kitty.